Konnichiwa. That is what many of you heard today when you watched the Nintendo 1 minute 30-second video explaining that Breath of the Wild 2 has been delayed until next year. And I think a lot of people were genuinely frustrated by this, but I'm hoping that as the news kind of settles, maybe people come to understand that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you're a pure Nintendo fan and you do nothing but play Nintendo Switch titles, this was probably a pretty big blow for you because this was kind of your thing. There wasn't really a whole lot going on in Nintendo. I know Kirby came out and it's been getting great reviews. I'd love to play it. I have yet not got around to even purchasing it. We got the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track set, the first of many track sets. But a lot of the really big hitters have been delayed. Advance Wars 2 was one that I was very frustrated by, that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. So I think if you're purely only a Nintendo person, I understand and I feel your pain. However, I think there's a wide majority of us who have the Nintendo Switch as a great second console. Second to a PC, second to an Xbox One S or X, second to your PlayStation 4 or 5. The Switch is not your daily driver. And for people in that camp, which I assume is like 90% of us, this is probably expected news. Nintendo does a good job of playing a lot of things very close to their chest. And they've gone back and forth on this before, where they have showed stuff a little too early, then it came out, it wasn't what we wanted. But it seems lately they have trended to releasing some of the big hit news close before it actually launches. And we haven't seen a whole lot. Stark contrast, of course, with the Xbox and with PlayStation. And PlayStation really a big culprit here when you think about how many times they have showed off games, event after event after event. How many trailers did we see on Uncharted 3 and Uncharted 4 and on Ghost of Tsushima? It was like, just release the damn game already. Last of Us 2, another big culprit of this. It's they do it the wrong way. And I think maybe people have gotten used to that, of expecting to see things and then they take forever. We even see it in film with Top Gun 2, which is, I swear this movie has been announced. Even the Batman, which finally did come out. My point is, Nintendo really has trended away from that. So this shouldn't be a surprise. The question remains, though, is to why. I mean, I think the most obvious, realistic answer is that it just wasn't ready. And Nintendo doesn't really have to compete with anybody because they have, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, made themselves in a league of their own. Yes, they're very cash wealthy. They own all of their own games. They do a lot of their own publishing and developing. Everything comes to them in-house. So they are not worried about money. They also don't have anything to prove. And they don't have to compete in the larger landscape. Nintendo does what Nintendo wants when Nintendo wants. If Nintendo was to release Breath of the Wild 2 on the launch of Elden Ring, I suspect the CEOs of Nintendo and the corporate, the CEO of Nintendo, there's only one, and the management team would probably be like, we'll be fine. We know our fans are going to come around to our game eventually, and they wouldn't care. So I say that specifically because I've seen a lot of comments online which are just, I don't know, a little baffling to me. People saying, oh, well, clearly Nintendo got around to playing Elden Ring and they realized that their game just wasn't on par with what Elden Ring was offering and they're going back to the drawing board. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. I know a lot of people said it in jest, but I think a lot of people said it in reality, and it is probably not true. Game development takes an incredibly long time. There's been so many great documentaries and books and kind of behind the scenes explanation of game development, and we know a good game takes about 5 years to develop. So Nintendo at this point there's no way this far into development would a game like Elden Ring come out and Nintendo to say, hold up, wait a minute, and turn around and scrap or majorly change the kind of the course of development. I think what may be happening is Nintendo is a big dreamer. Clearly, we have seen some of the craziest and wildest things come out from them. But I think they have to be very, very aware that while the Nintendo Switch has sold a zillion and one copies, and everybody and their mother has a Nintendo Switch at this point, it's a wildly popular console that just continues to impress and sell and sell and sell with a somewhat respectable library of titles now. There's just no denying the Nintendo Switch is just a very weak piece of hardware. And the original Breath of the Wild, when it came out, did not run very well. People with rose-colored glasses will look back on this and say, yeah, there was a couple hiccups here. It ran better in docked mode versus undocked mode. I was getting 1 or 2 more frames a second by downloading it as opposed to using the cartridge. The stories ran wild and rampant. But when you look back at that game, go back and look at the pop-in. Go back and look at some of the textures in the horizon. Look at the frame rate hitching. It's been a long time. It's been a very long time since this game came out. It was so fun, just like Elden Ring. Notice the similarity here. It was so fun that people were willing to overlook a lot of the technical issues and the stuttering and the stammering and some of the broken things about that game. And I think Nintendo has never had a problem releasing quality content in terms of rich and vibrant worlds and stories and characters and the matching merchandise and the amiibos and the tie-ins and the collector editions and all the wonderful things that Nintendo does and why we love them oh so much. I think this time the delay is really about the hardware. And if you look at the last few titles that Nintendo has released, I haven't played Kirby myself, but I have seen the benchmarks of it, and I've definitely seen a significant amount of gameplay of Pokemon Arceus. They do not run very well. And there are a lot of critics who are like, well, it's fun, but you're willing to overlook it. Those games pale in the complexity of the simulation that the original Breath of the Wild was. The original Breath of the Wild, in terms of lighting things on fire, the chain reactions with enemies, the environment and the simulation just working and being alive at all times, cutting down a tree and making a bridge, climbing a mountain, dynamic weather, cooking meat, raw meat on the ground and putting it down sizzled up. All these wonderful things that were in that game that made it such a joy to play. All the reasons we overlooked the poor technical performance. Unfortunately, does, in an environment now when this game releases, the Switch hardware is going to be even more dated. You've already been getting fat, dumb, and lazy and greedy like me because you've been playing some quality 60 frame per second titles, maybe 120 frame per second titles, as I talked about in my video just the other day. But when you have to jump over to a 30 frame per second experience, yes, you will. You will play Kirby and you will enjoy it. Yes, you will play Pokemon and Arceus, you will enjoy it. But you hear the rumblings. You hear people saying, it just doesn't look quite right, or I wish it ran a little better. I think that's what Nintendo's doing. I think they're going back and saying, you know what? Our hardware sucks. We know it sucks. We're past making the Switch 2. That ship has sailed. We're going to ride this thing into the ground. But we need to go back and do some refinement. We need to make it a little bit more smooth. And I think that's really where it is. I don't think there's any other secret rationale or reason behind, but I just wanted to put this video out there because it seems to me a lot of people are starting to build their own narrative. Nintendo has been at the top in their own way since the inception of video games. They definitely don't need From Software or any other developer to tell them how to run their ship because they've been doing a really good job of it on their own. That's one man's thoughts. I'd like to hear yours in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.